Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I feel really small this week.
Welcome to Inside the Rookery episode. I think it's episode 5, but I could be wrong. In which we discuss the Well of Bones, for all the Rooks are gathered together after many weeks of not a full complement of Rooks.
A full parliament.
A full parliament has arrived. We've had the obligatory countdown echoes. Who knows
Yes,
why?
we did.
Just
I heard them too.
Yeah.
So, let us get started. Today we're going to be talking about the Well of Bones, the supplement that we created for Albacon, and we have now released to all our patrons. So if you're interested in checking out what everyone else is looking at, and we'll be sharing some of the details today in terms of a screen share, and Mark will talk through some of his beautiful art, then you too can get a copy if you... Sorry, I'm just copying and pasting.
For just the quid, Lindsay.
Yes, sorry, Mark, I forgot to say that.
Or more if you like.
Let's be absolutely blunt about this. It's not very often you get an opportunity to actually scam yourself an entire supplement out of people who've just made it for what may have been a significant period of their life. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't get an awful lot of sleep on the run-up to Albacon, but we didn't get an awful lot of sleep on the run-up to Albacon.
And right Mark was getting ready to go to Pirate Island.
Oh, yeah, he totally was. He was donning makeup as he was doing his arting. Right now you can get it for a measly amount if you pop over to our Patreon and just support Inside the Rookery. So, whoops, I'll bash my mic as I go. Give us your money. I strongly recommend that you take this opportunity because it is an awesome supplement, and if you want to get it later, when we eventually do release it later to the general public, it will be a wee while before we do that, and it will obviously cost a good bit more than £1. So I'm not saying that you should, if you do back us, only back for £1. If you want to back us for 100, that's cool too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I won't complain, but right now, for a mere £1, you can have yourself the gorgeousness that we are about to discuss.
And stick around for the credits at the end when we call out the new Iron Rooks this week.
Oh, yes.
And we list everyone who's joined the Patreon this week. So we will get started, I think, because we've had some questions pre-submitted. And Roderick asked, quite handily actually, because I think we had intended to do this, can we just get a rundown of who did what in what order? So I think we said that we would talk through how the Well of Bones was made.
I'll start on this one because it's my job to generally take everybody through each step. So when the art comes in, I'll be speaking to which direction are you in? I'll be speaking to Mark, and when the writing's going on, I'll be speaking to writing people. When the editing's going on, I'll be speaking to the editing people. When the final layout's getting pinned down, I'll be speaking to the final layout. So it's my job to make sure each step goes along and everybody's talking to each other when they need to talk to each other. So I can quickly spin you through this. Right at the very beginning, as I think Andy will probably talk to, we weren't writing the Well of Bones to be the Well of Bones as it currently is. The Well of Bones was created for a completely different purpose. I'll let Andy discuss that specifically, but when it got picked up and moved over and it became its own individual supplement, the who did what was me stepping in, taking what Andy had already written and going, how do we turn this into a full supplement, sketching out everything that had to be written, pulling all of that down, discussing it with everyone, because we meet every single week to discuss what we're doing. None of our supplements are ever created by an individual. Even if one person is responsible for basically pinning down all the information, it's still a group effort. We're still discussing it all the way through. We pinned down everything that was going to go round to the first round of writing. It got written. It then got pinged out to everyone to have a look at. The words were then edited by Graham, as I go over there. Graham then pinned through, and everybody else then jumped in and had a good read as well. And if they had any extra ideas that were easy to install, they got installed. Another round of writing and then final edit was done. It then moved over to Mark. And then this is where we do things a little bit more, let's say, differently. Normally, in most, shall we say, processes for supplement design, the words have stopped now. We're done. At best, you will get a proofread at the end when all the words have been installed, and they should be perfect at this point without need for a proofread because we're fully edited and double-checked. But sometimes when you install words during layout, small mistakes happen. Things get dropped. Little things, as they're pasted in, go wrong. So you get a proofread at the end, and hopefully everything will be picked up. Not so with us. Mark has a good read as well. We end up with lots of spaces in the layout that he leaves purposefully there for extra words, for extra art. And then we have another chin wag and go, can we do anything else? And Mark's extra ideas as he starts pinning down his art then get installed as cool new images. And that in turn changes the words because we've got something new to write about. Because, say, for example, the Veil of Tears, for those of you who've got it, didn't exist until we reached the art point because Mark read it and went, well, holy shit, let's do this. So extra writing gets installed at this point. Mark finishes off all the art and the layout. It then all goes back through to edit and proofreading, where the last, hopefully, hands will come in. That will be Andy in this case, and Lindsay did a proofread at this point as well. Then it goes out to finishing, where I look over the whole thing and make sure everything has been installed correctly. There's generally at this point lots of tiny little niggly bits, and it's my job to catch those. The proofreader catches as much of them. I catch the extras. Everything's hopefully smoothed off. Then we ship it. Now, normally, there would be a little bit more time before we finished, we proofread, and we ship. But let's say that we crunched right up to the very edge of this Albacon deadline. The day before it was going, as Mark was donning his piratical makeup, we were still scrabbling away. So the PDF that got shipped out to Albacon and shipped out to our top tier Rooks then went through an extra round of internal proofreading as well as external proofreading, because there was all of you out there that came in and said, is there a few extra things you could do here, here, and here? And we said, yes, yes, yes. I collected all of them because that's my job as the overall producer-y chap. I grabbed all of those, discussed them with Mark, got them all installed, and we've reached the final PDF that you hopefully all have today, which has, I believe, maybe an error in it that I would like to address. There may be more, but there's generally always one thing that slips through, isn't there? One tiny spell. But we reached the final point where we have our final PDF. So to sum that all up, because it's quite a long process, initial writing and in fact, initial design. Initial design was for a different product, and then it was redesigned by me to make a new product. So Andy did the first stage of writing. I then did the second stage of writing. It then went out to editing with Graham. It then went out to everybody to check through. It then went over to Mark for extra art and extra layout. We then pinned that all down. Everybody read it again. Then got put in for its extra round of writing. And then once that was done, an extra round of editing, then an extra round of proofreading, and we shipped it.
That was it. I don't blame Andy Law for forgetting the fact that I did an editing pass because he.
Oh yes, that's true.
Extremely sleep deprived when he asks me to do things, and
so
this is no. And also, we can talk about this later. But the fact that Andy and I live in the same house means that we also share. Well, we don't share the same office space because my day work is secret and highly confidential. My work as an Inquisitor, and so quite often, though, we bounce ideas back and forth between each other. So I'll hear just a shout from the other room. Can you think of 3 story hooks, please, on the theme of flesh and bone? And it'll be my.
I always think the laws as a single entity. Anyway, I don't think of you as Andy and Lindsay. It's just the laws.
The Gestalt, Lindsay and Andy. We have been that for a very long time now. So let's go back to the very start. There's a question the Rangdo of Arg has asked, and maybe Andy Lease, you can speak to this because you were there at the start. But what were the initial inspirations for the Well of Bones?
I mean, a lot. I guess as Andy said before, this was designed initially for a different product. We've gone through multiple iterations of how we think we're going to structure the things that we're doing and how we're going to get them into the hands of you lovely people out there. And at one point we were planning essentially a document that would be almost like a summary, like a little taster of all of the city, of all the different districts that we had. So every district was going to have it was going to be one location from every district in the city to give you a taster for kind of what that was like in terms of the theme and the type of like industry or kind of residence that you would get there, give you a bit of a flavor. And this was one of the locations for the area called Crawfell. So when I was going through that document and trying to think like what is the kind of the archetypal location to have for that without giving away any specific spoilers for the Call of Crown campaign, suffice it to say that the things that the one might find within the Well of Bones are thematically on point with what's going to happen when you get to Crawfell. Not the same. There's much more kind of evil, monstrous goodness to come when we actually get there. But certainly the themes of things being buried underneath, the things of there being something down there that isn't necessarily what you expect, the themes of things being frozen. I probably don't want to go into any more detail than that, but all those things are sort of central to what's going to happen in Crawfell. There will be other stuff happening, but in terms of the main story arc of the Call of Crown, that was what was going to be in there. I should probably, I don't know if we clarified this before. Am I okay to spoil stuff that's in the Well of Bones on this stream, or?
Spoiler alert! Yes.
Awesome. So, one of the things in particular that I was very keen to have in there was demons, because I think demons are an interesting sort of villainous force that they're one of my enduring frustrations when we were working on Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Purely because it's that classic problem that GMs often talk about of the lack of mystique that comes from things having been featured in the tabletop war game. So when you go back and read, say, Enemy Within, that's written by Graham, and you've got I won't name spoilers, but you've got demons acting in a particular way that is the enemy within, right? They're subtle and they're manipulative and they're corrupting us from within, and that's great fodder for role-playing games. But when you go to the war game, then what the demons are these massive kind of rank and file things kind of running at you that are very cool and they're very well designed, but they lack that insidious kind of malevolence, that ability to influence, to just exist in a city. If a bloodletter of Khorne popped up in the middle of Altdorf, say, people would notice. So what I was keen to do with demons was to both enable that kind of more insidious possession, essentially, element of things, which is a thing that does exist to a degree in Warhammer, but absolutely make that an integral kind of thing that demons can do, while also perhaps not necessarily ruling out the embodied form of demons. So there's a reference to the well being the maw of this particular demon, so that you have a degree of both there. You have both the idea that there was something physical, a monstrous corpus there once, and then also there is this malicious intent, this force of will that is able to exert itself upon the world. And there's a lot more to come of that inside the Call of Crown, but that was something I was very keen to get kind of embedded into our world as kind of quickly as possible.
I also thought, did we talk also about what's the smallest location we could come up with? And it was either a well or a toilet.
Yeah.
And then what would be in the toilet or the well?
Yeah.
Well,
we did.
I think
we spent some time riffing about throwing coins in a well and possible fantasy applications of that. And
yeah.
Here's what we didn't think of. An oubliette, of course.
That's a good one. I'd also like to specifically call out Mark's influence on some of the things that Andy was discussing there. One of my jobs was basically writing everything. The initial writing that Andy had done was for a small location to go into a bunch of small other locations. So the entire document would have been about 10 locations and not much bigger as a document than the one that we currently have now. So I ended up having to do quite a lot of extra stuff while still making it the same thing. Mark came along and he did pretty much the same as what Andy was suggesting there, but he took a couple of elements and said, can't we just dial this up just a bit? For example, the maw. Originally, that was just almost a well. It was a weird possessed thing down there that demons were clearly influencing. There was a definite story hook through to other matters, as Andy was discussing, but it wasn't so readily the maw.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't the maw of a demon. There was the corpse of a demon. Was what was
absolutely, and it had changed, and that was a beautiful addition. And I think that's one of the great joys that we have as a team working together, because we keep on adding extra ideas, and none of us are so prissy to think that our ideas are better. We obviously have ideas that are important for overall stories that are more difficult to shift, but we're always looking to build upon and expand upon what we've got, because we've all got so many lovely ideas. And just because one foundation point is great doesn't mean that it can't be made better by adding in that extra little detail that really makes it zing. So Mark have added a few extra details regarding the maw that I think is worth picking up on.
Look, I'm just going to bring this comment out because it's a 4 for lad.
4 for lad.
Hearts. Just finished reading the PDF. This is really impressively put together. Looks gorgeous, and I can imagine using this in Wolfram and Blades campaigns. There's loads more that we can come back to later. Like, I love the story with the Mother Superior character. And Steve says, just downloaded the PDF, looks delightfully grim. Vagrant says, I love the way it's dialed up to 11, but doesn't feel out of place.
I'd like to call that last one out in particular, because Mark and I danced around this for some time, because we were discussing possibly bringing the maw up to the top. And that would have made it more difficult to both dial it up to 11 and ensure it didn't feel like it was out of place. And we would discuss different ways that we could make it all work together, so that if you've got a game that's relatively low fantasy, you can still bring in all the elements all the way down to the maw, and the maw can just be, if you wish, a deeper drop. But if you're playing a high fantasy game, then you've got pretty much everything that you can throw into that as well. It was trying to make sure that we could pitch it to each different type of group.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my job is problem solving in terms of how things look visually. So yeah, the challenge with the maw is I was trying to work out, well, when you got down there, what's the most impactful and significant way that this demon can manifest? How can it affect the players in the most potent fashion? So when the idea of the maw is a maw, and you actually inside the demon, it then becomes right, that's ramped it up to 11, rather than it being something sat in the corner that comes out at you. You're kind of like, you're forced into it. It's a bit more visceral.
That moment when you realize you're actually in
the demon
trouble. You are really in trouble. You're not just in trouble. That's always fun.
And some of the work that I did in editing, because I knew that Graham was going to come in and do a proper grown-up edit, I was more focused on like themes and words and making sure that things were repeated that needed to be repeated, and that they harked back to the underlying themes that Andy, you were thinking that you wanted to get across, which is a fun way to edit, but only if you've got Graham to do a grown-up one after you. And then also because we were on the same site, as I said, when Mark would come back with, can you do 200 words here? Andy was able to say to me, can you just read over this and do, like a quick edit of this one? And I'm annoyed with myself because Andy had left a test in, he said, an editing test. And I'm usually quite good at picking up like the things in edits that are more ephemeral, like, does it make sense? And not grammatically speaking, but from a story sense. And there was something in there that is now fixed that didn't quite make sense, and I didn't catch it, and I was really annoyed with myself. But I'm going to get it next
less
time.
a test and more something I hadn't fixed yet.
No, he told me it was a test. He definitely said those words.
It wasn't a mistake.
Yeah. Let me let you into a little secret. Teachers do that all the time. Right? If I make a spelling mistake on a board and then I go, well done, that was a test. No, I just made a spelling mistake on the board. That's all that was.
Well, Andy is a born teacher. It would appear. I was just going to get to another. Oh, there's another one I wanted to bring out because this one makes me laugh so much. I love the side box, bring out your bones. Ties in nicely to the plot hook. Definitely not cannibals. Here's to you, Ruby the Halfling from our Warhammer campaign.
Oh, that was the point. They from my perspective, there's still a slight adventure hooks are in a slightly different order because they had to be when Mark was playing Adventure Hook Tetris to try and make sure that they fit into the page. So they're all in a slightly different order. The original order was far more clear run through of the story that would leave you as a reader getting an extra of oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, until the very last one, which was the demon itself, and you're like, holy crapola. So it's in a slightly different order, but bringing out the dead and making sure that you properly telegraph what's going to come later. It's part of the skill of putting something like this together, because we're not just creating a supplement that you're reading and pitching to your players as somewhere cool to be. We're also creating a supplement that you're just simply reading, and ensuring that that is a fun read and that you are taken along with the text as it ramps up is an important part. Right at the very beginning, I could have simply said, oh, there's a demon down there. And that would have been as legitimate an expression of the location as dropping it right at the very end inside the hooks. But it makes it less of an interesting read for the GMs as they're working their way through it. Because you get that feeling of step-by-step insidious nastiness that the players will hopefully get when they're playing through it as well. So it gives you as a reader the first steps towards how you might want to try and present it. So from our perspective, when we're putting the words together and trying to make sure that we're not just building a cool place, but we're also building something that gives you that sense of as you're getting your way down to the bottom. So the ordering is relatively important for that. And also ensuring that we have some fairly early call outs to what's going to be coming so that nothing's a surprise while simultaneously it's an actual surprise.
And whose idea was the crane?
Don't remember.
I don't remember.
I think that may have been, that was when Mark and I were discussing aspects.
It was, because it wasn't in when I did my first pass, because it was partially solving a problem, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Ossian Cathedra, I added that, but I'm not sure I added the concept. I just added the name and its description and similar.
I remember talking about Bertha being carried around on a sedan chair or something like that.
Yeah.
And then exactly.
To get up the stairs, and then maybe she gets winched up.
And Mark, we had to add the sedan chair, because it was your idea that she just got the layers and layers of clothes that she gets every year. So she's so weighed down by the shrouds of every corpse she's dismantled that she can't actually walk about anymore. There you go. Vagrant 456 with the Urge of Lamentations, not just a fun read, but an emotional one as well, almost choked me up. And Andy
Same here when I read it.
Writing
Definitely.
a dirge or a threnody.
I do love a dirge and a threnody. This one was actually, from everyone else's perspective, although they didn't quite realize it, it was the bit that was constantly holding everything else up. I did all the rest of the words, and there was just this constant little bit that was left blank saying, there'll be something here, honest. And I was working on it in the background because I don't just like throwing out poetry. I like worrying about every single word, and I did. And that took much longer than all the rest, but fortunately we had enough time to slot it in right at the very end.
Well, I made Andy's life harder with that, because the dirge was going into a box within a column. So when he wrote it initially, the lines were too long and they were breaking, and it just it didn't look good. It didn't read. So I sent it back to him. And at that point, I hadn't actually read it. I only read it when he submitted the final version, and I found it very moving as well.
Yay! Well, job done.
Did we encounter any points where editorial paralysis became a problem? Imposter syndrome, like this isn't going to make sense, is it?
No. I'll be blunt here. It's not just that we're professionals and we know how to do our job. That is the case, but I've been caught up against far too many deadlines. I know how to make something good because I've done it several times. I've taken work that was relatively standard and made it really shine. I have no lack of confidence when it comes to the words, and my own big-headed arrogance will see me through. And I have the exact same confidence in everybody else as well. I have no doubt that Graham's edits will catch a whole ton of crap that I missed. And I rely on that. I have no doubt that Andy will come up with all manner of cool, crazy ideas, drop them down on the page, and then ping them over and say, hey, look at all this shit. And I'll go, woohoo! I have no doubt that Lindsay will take out all my repeated words and stupid spelling mistakes when I give it to her. I have no doubt that Mark will come along, see it all, and say, have you considered this? Because I think this is going to make it look amazeballs. To which I'll go, yes, it will. I don't think that the product that I'll create as my particular part of it will necessarily be the best, but I do think that all of us together will create something that is, even when we're pushed up against the wall, going to be amazing. And when we've got that little bit of extra time, which we're obviously going to with the other ones, is hopefully just really going to sing, because we're all really good at our jobs. I am arrogant enough to say that.
It's true though. So Martin asks, did Jamie and the Magic Torch inspire the Helter Skelter Dead Shoot? Or a slightly broader question, how many pop culture references are there hidden within the Well of Bones? I think we're sad to report that Jamie and the Magic Torch didn't inspire the Helter Skelter.
I'm really gutted that it didn't. I mean, my perspective, and this is a really sad thing to admit, was just Graveyard Keeper, the silly computer game, where there's a nice little corpse shoot that goes down. And I was like, no, I really like that. That really fits here. Let's make sure that's in, which is really uninspiring as an inspiration, because it's just a good idea that we transported over. And I really wish it had been that, because then I could have dropped in some funny little line that would have referenced it, and I feel like I missed out. True fact. But in terms of cultural references, I think you'll find inevitably, yes, there are some. I don't want to list them all, purely because to do so is to a degree to spoil them. Some of them are quite obvious, given that the society, for example, is the Society of the Grateful Dead. And there are a few extra jumps off of that in terms of naming and similar. There is a couple of deep cut ones from my side as well. Andy, I know, wrote some names. I'm not sure if they're references or not, because I didn't change them for a couple of the adventure hooks. The hooks themselves got advanced slightly and developed and wrapped into some hooks that we've got for some other locations. For example, the Necromancer Harrodun was added, where beforehand it was, I think, just a generic NPC bad guy. And that's someone who pops up in another couple of plot lines elsewhere. But I don't know about his ones, but my ones most definitely.
There definitely is at least one that I looked at it and went, I remember writing that as a reference, but I can't remember what it's a reference to. I've disguised the name so effectively, and I can't actually remember. It'll come back to me. But reading it through just there, I was going, what is that? And no, I can't remember. So, yeah. I would say there's fewer pop culture references, I think, than the stuff we did back for Ubersreich, for instance, because for Warhammer it's very easy to just Germanify the name and ta-da, and it fits. And it fits the tone a little bit more as well. You know, we're going for something a little bit, you know, I don't want to say darker. I don't mean that in a grim, dark way, but a little bit more, I don't know, like heavy, consequential, perhaps, in terms of tone.
And the one that I mentioned earlier that people won't get is not a pop culture reference, but it's not cannibalism if it's not the same species, comes from our own game, which I think were we playing Death on the Reich?
Yeah.
And we encountered some goblins eating humans, but they had a halfling chef, and one of the halflings in our party vociferously argued that it wasn't cannibalism if it was human, because they're
not human. Yeah.
Not human.
It's not human.
Well, it's half cannibalism, surely.
And Diego, considering I have had and played with a draft of Ship of Fools and now have Well of Bones in my hands, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the Rookery output. And that made me think of a comment on the Discord server about turning Well of Bones into a futuristic setting, much as people did with
Well of Drones. That was from Martin.
And that was from Martin, and that is Well of Drones, which I think is really nice.
I thought that was really nice, to the point of, I think that would make a lovely little side article. And if he's interested in writing that, I think it'd be well worth doing. It wouldn't take very much. It would make a lovely little box. And I think is, particularly given the quick change of the names, what was it, Bertha W31R or something like that. And I thought that was a lovely little change. And the whole thing just oozed character while simultaneously being exactly the same location. And I think that's one of the great things that we can do in terms of adding little extras when we turn it into a published one as well, where we can say, hey, you could do it this way, you could do it that way.
There's this question from Cosmonaut, which we will come back to, because in the meantime, I just want to go to something else, and that is a pre-submitted one. Can we expect future products to come with a unique emoji? Mark?
Over to you. I think that's a fantastic idea. I don't see why not. I think if there's an obvious, or even not so obvious, little emoji that fits with the theme, I think it would be a cool little thing. Every time we launch a product, we add an emoji to the archives.
I think it's safe to
commit myself to that now.
I think it's safe to say that anytime Mark has an idea for an emoji, it is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, Discord says we can have 100. I went, oh God, really?
But this gives you a reason to space them out now, though, because you're saving them for future products. So
I'd also like to just drop a quick the whole Veil of Bones, the Veil of Tears, pardon me, that was added by Mark in the post-writing phase. And I think it's such a characterful part of the location, and in particular the Sorrowers, and how the Sorrowers present themselves. And I think that I'm going to call it out specifically to show that just the writing process alone isn't what creates what we hope to be some of the best material that we can manage to throw at everybody. It's a combined process where the visuals then come in on top, and then that goes back to the writing, then that to a degree goes back to the visuals again. And it really, really made a difference, because that happened before, for example, the Dirge was added. And that impacted the Dirge as well, because it just gave it a slightly different tone, and it changed the tone of the writing elsewhere too. And all of the Veil of Tears writing that didn't exist before it was done. In fact, the Sorrowers, before that part was added, was all of about 1.5 paragraphs worth of actual material, and then it significantly expanded.
The description in the draft text I got, the Sorrowers were white robed.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much it. So for me it was and they worked bone. They carved and they decorated bones. So it's kind of okay. Well, what's the connection there? And you think of the Sorrower is a very characterful name, and so it's just they probably cry a lot, or certainly tears would be symbolic. So how can I combine tears with the working of bone? And the bone tears, and then they're decorated in the veils if they're crying the whole time. So that's how that grew. And then the white robes became a series of shrouds that they would build up. So that's how that sort of stuff. And it's that back and forth. Absolutely, that's usually where the strong ideas come from.
Yeah, and Mark sent us a couple of sketches, and we all just went, "Holy crap, we're having that!" And
totally.
On that note, shall I share the screen so you can talk us through some of
the Well Bones. In fact, it's interesting. I'm going to call this one out particularly because I envisaged this very differently. And it was wonderful seeing it arrive, because I was like, I think I see what Mark was saying when that could have been near the surface. Because I had originally envisaged a far more collar-like metal disc that's sitting at the top that looked like it was a big studded collar with big, massive, spiky bits jabbing in at various angles. Where, no, it was just nails holding it down into place. Big nails, but nails nonetheless. And this, for me, nailed it down into place. But it was interesting because it showed how words can express inside the mind of different people in different ways, and how visuals are so important for our understanding of how things are going to be portrayed as we as GMs then pass it over to players. I much prefer this to what was sitting at the back of my mind, because I felt like it was altogether too much for it to be anywhere close to ever being seen ever by anyone, because everyone would go, what the flying fuck is that? Is that a gigantic collar sitting over a mouth holding a mouth open? What the fuck? Certainly not something that you could easily present to your next door neighbor. Should they be coming to visit and drop off their dead people. So the more I heard of its description of this big giant maw thing that led in, the deeper I wanted it to go, to ensure that the players could encounter it later. But when the actual image came through, I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. That's actually sensible. Right. As I was
sketching it out, I did a version that was far more elaborate, but I kept coming back to just a simple, sort of hammered iron frame with big nails in, and just keeping it kind of subtle. Yeah,
I love it.
How many nails are in it? Like, how many segments?
I don't know. I didn't count them. That's probably significant, isn't it now?
It's going to be now.
16? Is there 16? And one of those nails is missing. Yeah, I really liked it when it came through. Really, like, simple but also evocative of other things like gateways. Like, what are you doing? We can now see your.
Sorry, I forgot that was my main screen. I was about to take some notes to make sure I didn't forget. Let's move that way. That's what you call professional streaming.
But the idea that some of the nails seem to have worked themselves out was another hint to there's a tension there, you know.
Yeah, I love that.
Vagrant says there's 12, but I don't
know. Definitely more than 12
nails.
Yeah.
That's not right.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's more, I think. I think there's 16.
I'm counting 16, yeah.
There's 16 nails. 16. Maybe there's fewer segments. There was a quick question earlier on, which I can't find now, but I'm just going to ask it because I remember it. And that is, are there any limits to the number of updates you can do to PDFs on drive-through?
No.
No, thanks. It's simple. I knew you'd have
there isn't, and I think that's to our benefit, because it means that if we do wish to do updates later, we can, particularly if, for example, through the course of our development of later parts of the story, we decide that we wished we put that in an earlier part, we can do so. Obviously, you can't do that with print books, but with little things like this, we most certainly can. And that can often just be a quick drop sentence here or there that can completely change the tone of a piece. And I like that we've got that freedom should we wish to use it. Now, we have planned everything in advance. We do know everything that we intend to do, but as we have noted through just the creation of this one small PDF, when everything hits the fan, it all splatters out in different directions, and we create, hopefully, a really good Jackson Pollock that is absolutely gorgeous, if you like your Jackson Pollocks. But who's to say that any of those were properly planned? But yeah, I like having the opportunity to make changes if we wish to do so.
Yeah. So, shall we move through?
I certainly can. Let me just pull out a little mousey there. As we then go, oh no, we went 2 pages at once. We went 3 pages at once. Oh man. Yes. I just want to stop and just say, wow. I cannot express how much I love this piece, and I don't just love this piece because the piece itself and the single figure that just reminds me of Shadow the Torturer, which immediately makes me smile because of an old cover that I loved as a kid. It's not just that, it's also the spread. And it's something that Mark and I discussed several times, because PDFs are generally presented as single page, and then you can view it as a double page if you wish at home, but they're single pages that you scroll through. And this very much to me is the spread, because it's not just the image, it's the whole swoop of the page as it moves down. And I adore this. I saw it and I just smiled and went, and that was pretty much the summation of what I said.
Mark, that was a purposeful choice on your behalf to make double page spreads, not single.
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole book, when I was putting it together, was spreads. I didn't look at anything as a single page. So when Andy said, "Oh well, usually PDFs go out of single pages," oh no, I didn't. I didn't plan for that. So I'll always want to look at them like this, because for me it's like it's a book, and I'm old school. So the digital one page at a time is kind of like. Fortunately, there's nothing that breaks across those pages badly. So it still works individual pages. But yeah, I'll always try and think about how the opposing pages work with each other.
I'll also call out from the perspective of the way we've been doing layout in comparison to how I'd done layout previously. Layout previously was very much you've got all your words, they are now finished. They are given to the layout artist, and the layout artist makes them fit with the pictures that they've been given. And often the art is shrunk, changed, flipped, moved around all over the place, all manner of stuff in an almost incidental fashion, which frequently frustrated me. The only parts, which from my perspective always brought a smile to my face, the only parts that were almost never touched are maps, because they are fixed at a particular size. But all too often you'll find that everything is not so much artistically laid down on a page as it's just slotted in where it fits in a, as we mentioned earlier, a giant piece of word Tetris.
Yeah, it's certainly worth saying that at the layout phase, when I was putting all the words down, there was no art. I hadn't painted anything. I didn't start painting it until I knew where the text was going to flow and how much space I felt I had to work with. So yeah, which is arse backwards from traditional publishing.
Absolutely, and it's just not how we normally do it. And I have much preferred this as a process. It did mean, though, that I'm going to go over to the next page because this is a fine example of it. No, next page. It really wants to double skip there. There's the Sorrowers. It did mean, though, that when we came to the Sorrowers, Mark went, yeah, I want to have a double page spread for the Sorrowers, K, thanks, bye. And I was left going, but wait a minute, I've only written about this bit here.
Yeah, you'd written the 2 paragraphs.
And that's it. Well, what? And he's like, nah, we're doing a double page spread for that because I think it'll be much better to have the double page spread for the Sorrowers in the next page. He was completely right, but that didn't mean I was happy about it, because I had to then sit down and go, well, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, this is great because we can actually give detail where previously there wasn't a great deal of detail, where most of the detail was left over for their stats to present. Now I could actually go into a little bit of the background. So we did. But
yeah, you should do a poem or a song. Go on.
Yeah, totally. I was like, yes. I do like your Urge. But none of this was specifically planned in the first sections. This initial planning of the document gives you everything that's core, and then when we get these extras, they are exactly that. It's all the extra lovely detail we always wished that we could include, and we now get an opportunity to do so. If this had been, for example, a product for a more traditional one, you'd have found that this detail here would have been dropped down to a single page at most. And we would have had to just not have all this extra stuff. And the PDF itself would almost certainly have been shorter. Would have probably made about a 14-page PDF, probably.
And how many pages is it?
This one comes out at 21, although we do have quite a few. I can't show you that there's a couple of pages that are just big pages.
Can you? Sorry, I keep on putting comments up and it hides Graham, but I can't swap around our order. I feel like we should all be taking a turn and having the comments pasted over our faces, but unfortunately, maybe we'll fix that next week. So in the spread before, the Plague Doctor is shooting the signatures. Can you go back to that?
I don't have that one.
Okay.
I've only got some of the
Rango of ours looking at their copy.
Yes, he is shooting the signatures.
Yep. He's vaccinating them, surely. He's got a syringe. He's just squirting something.
Because we are plagued.
Can I ask you a layout question, Andy? Then, so on this, just when you were talking about like other products and stuff, and one thing that I've noticed sometimes in that kind of role-playing supplements is that you might get a detail like that for the I'm pointing at the screen like you guys can see what I'm pointing at, like the Veil of Tears there.
Yes,
like that's the kind of detail that in a lot of books would sometimes be like somewhere else entirely in the book, like far early. Is that just they had space, too much content there, not enough content there, so they popped the random box where it would fit?
Yeah. You often find that boxes are used as our little filler pieces of art as part of their word Tetris, as they're trying to figure out what they can and can't fit in each page. Boxes are often dropped or just moved around into the strangest places. And the number of times I've had to go in after a layout and say, we can't have that there. That's literally nothing to do with what else. Can we move it? And on the layout side, you get a quick, no, what? No, please don't make me redo these pages. But sometimes it has to be done. Sometimes it doesn't need to be done. Sometimes you can just change the text slightly so there's an extra reference. But this was just neater because we were filling spaces rather than we were moving things around because we had to.
Yeah, I'd planned to do a couple of pieces of filler art because I assumed we'd need them because you always have them. And it just turned out, no, I didn't need to make any of them because we just
I think that's actually one of the
together.
benefits of the way we're doing it. I mean, we can have filler art if we want to do so, but in the greater scheme of things, words are very simple to put together. You can almost always add an extra little quotation, an extra little detail, something characterful that means that you don't need filler art. Filler art is normally there for exactly that reason, filler. And often the pieces of spot art, they're often called spot art. Your spot pieces have nothing to do with what's going on with the main piece of text. I would take, for example, when I was working in Warhammer, I had approximately 40 pieces of spot art. And about 20 of those were made by Ralph Horsley, another 20 were made in-house. And only about 6 of those were generally useful. The rest of them were quite specific. And if you drop them into the text, you'd be going, why is there a little set of dice there? That's got nothing to do with what's going on here. I mean, it's characterful and it's like Warhammer dice, yay, but it doesn't necessarily fit the text around it. So you tended to find that either you repeated your bits of spot art, which looks cheap, or you ended up with spot art that just didn't quite fit. And it's exactly that. It's filler. It's nothing more. And while sometimes if you do it correctly, I think we did quite a good job with it in the starter set, for example, where the spot art was specifically called out and designed for each one of the slots. That helped because it adds actual characterful detail that's designed for it. It's still filler, where with text, it's very, very rarely filler because we are big-headed enough to think we've always got something extra that we could write about.
And just before we go into the maps, Cosmonaut asked this a little while ago now. I would like to hear how you envision people will use or convert stat blocks to various systems. That might be a longer answer than we have time for, but maybe a quick overview.
I think actually this one's probably worth picking up later because it's not specifically about the Well of Bones. It's more generalized over the comments. I do, however, have a question for everybody else. And only because it was brought up somewhere. It might have been a message. I'll check out where it came from beforehand. If it was you that made the comment that I'm about to utter, please tell us in the chat. But somebody brought up that the stats, which are currently summarized as 3-letter, effectively codes. So for status, it's STA. Whether the word is better or whether the code is better. I asked because they found them difficult to parse. As codes, which is what all RPGs do. So we sort of did it by course. We just didn't think too much about it. But given that ours is specifically designed to be generic and easy to pick up, their comment was, should it just say status? Should it just say combat? Because it'll be much easier for me to understand it immediately. To which I thought, you know what? That's a very, very sound point. Does anyone else think that's a good idea? And if you do, head into Discord, tell us, or drop in some comments and say, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. Please do tell us, because we are as willing and open to the cool ideas as anyone could possibly be. And if that is a better way of presenting it, then I think that's something we'll definitely discuss behind the scenes as to how we could best do that.
And as an addendum to that, like in response to Cosmonaut's question, I think popping over to Discord is the answer there as well. In that there's loads of GMs there. So, you know, the way we kind of envisage this is if you're using the Well of Bones in D&D and you kind of do something with the stats, then you share that in the D&D section and say how you've interpreted it, and other GMs can talk to you and take advice. And we've got a great community building up there. So take advantage of that and share one another's good ideas and spread the load.
I also forget that not everybody was part of the Ship of Fools playtest where this was widely discussed.
Yeah. And the comment was from Rango, and it was about the numbers, because it was about how 2 times 2 being exponential is but actually being 3 is counterintuitive. And Zoltan agrees, saying, I agree, number could have a more detailed explanation. And Ship of Fools has some info on interpreting the stats block for the Rookery products.
Yeah, this one was curtailed purely because of space. And we could have put all of, for example, everything that was written in Ship of Fools into this, but it would have taken a whole extra page or so of what would have felt like filler. So we dropped it down into a smaller box because it still did everything that was needed, while simultaneously, as several have noted, it probably does want some more, but our other products do provide all of that. So it's the bare minimum to squeeze through, while we do cover it with more detail in other products. But I definitely think there's something there to consider.
And I think Oxecutor said they would prefer the word 3-character codes, maybe misunderstand it as D&D. I totally agree. I would prefer not codes because I think it's harder to read codes.
And like you say, Andy, the very fact that those codes are what's normally used in RPGs is almost a problem. Because it's not like our, it's
not our system.
Exactly. Our code might not mean the same thing. And
absolutely. Agreed completely. Yeah,
that's very true.
It made me think when I read it. I was like, "There's something I was totally blind to."
Yeah, I've never thought of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shall we pop along and have a look at the maps?
Oh, yes. Let's pull them up now. I didn't do that.
How did you find the experience?
Yeah, the one thing we didn't get our professional cartographer to do. The man who makes a living making maps didn't
I do?
the map.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
We did have a genuine reason for that, didn't we, Mark?
An excuse, I call it.
Had a reason for it.
Well, yeah, it was because I was very keen to ensure that anything with any sort of handout type things that we do, these maps are the first example of that, also reflected the general style of the product. So they are stylized. They're more interpretive than truly accurate. And I wasn't going to sit down and make sure I got all the measurements and all the proportions right. I just wanted to give players a sense of where everything's interconnected. And then they were free to sort of move things around or reinterpret if you wanted. Yeah, you couldn't print these out and move your miniatures around on top of them. Not with any sense of accuracy, but it was more just kind of get a feel for how the place fitted together. And even thanks to Roderick's comment last night on Discord, he said there's no you haven't put the exit for the privy for the drop where the toilet empties into the well. And I went, oh no, I meant to do that. I forgot. I wanted to put shit-stained walls on my map. So last night about 2:00 in the morning, I'm there painting away, dirty protests down the side of the wall. There we go, it's in there now. So thanks to Roderick for pointing that out. And so again, it's kind of because they're not wildly accurate, I was able to jump in and do that. And
so do you view these as in-game maps?
Sorry?
Do you view these as in-game maps then? Like someone in the world has created them?
Yeah, I mean, I always like that anyway. Rather than that's my preference, rather than a sort of contemporarily accurate, ordnance survey sort of style. I want to see maps that are packed with flavor, but I also appreciate that there is a demand for stuff that is accurate for those players and those GMs that really want to be able to track progress accurately. So Andy's going to be doing those in future. That's the general.
Yay!
I really like location like 1, 2, 3 and down to 4. I think that's got a really nice feel. The way it kind of winds down.
Well, again, I had to fix the staircase yesterday because another Jalib pointed out that I got the staircase backwards. This is what comes to painting them in the 11th hour. Last week it was gotta get them done, and then I realized because I've been rotating bits and pieces to get the map elements to all fit together. I realized the staircase went the wrong way around. Halfway down, it reversed direction, and you could blame that on the strange demonic influences. But I don't think that really holds water.
We've all used those excuses.
A wizard did it.
These maps are in the Sorrowers archive for the neophytes coming into the fold.
There you go. There you go. Brilliant.
And Oil Painting 71 wonders if it's Alphonse's place.
Because it's fab. I'll give you, for example, a lovely difference between how Mark approaches these things and how I approach these things. And I thought it was characterized by one single interplay between us. he sent through the initial sketches for how he thought the place went, and I sent back one with a set of lines going, yeah, your well doesn't line up. And he was like, this is a sketch, get out of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it doesn't line up. If you drop something, it's just going to bounce.
Yes, it doesn't line. So if somebody in my sketch version, if somebody were to drop a coin from the charnel hall, it would not pass directly through the moor, was Andy's concern, which I naturally rolled my eyes at.
That's the fun that we have. But yes, I think there's actually a question there, because if I don't need to do extras, I won't. Is there a need from GMs out there for a more detailed version that could pop up? There we go, for example, and in world that is there a need for that? Would, for example, a separate, say, 1-page, 2-page PDF, or just a big PDF that sits aside to this one, with a detailed version of the map instead, would that be something that people would want? And if so, is that something that's worth adding to the paid version at a later date? Come and talk to us, because we're not just creating the stuff according to our own preferences. We're creating stuff that everybody wants and needs. And if I can get out of doing a job to go and do something else, I mean, you won't see me complain, but equally, I really enjoy my job. So I'll quite happily jump in this if it's something that everybody thinks.
Caleb, don't provoke him.
I mean, I suppose
but the map is beautiful. It's okay, Mark.
An adjacent question to that, I suppose, is the virtual tabletop thing, isn't it? Is the extent to which people are actually going to use it.
It's the sort of location that people are going to want to have a map for when they're, say, for example, on a virtual tabletop. And that's something that is only really going to be up to you, everybody that's using this stuff, to decide on our behalf. If it's something that a lot of you are calling for, then we'll definitely do it. I'll give an example of that. One of the things that we plan to do with some of our later expansions is to have nice little foldovers for the NPCs. So these are nice little bits you can cut out, drop on top of your GM screens, or you can do as a little standee off at the side. On one image, you'll have your nice little your NPC. On the other side, it'll have the description that sits inside the book. It's a very simple extra PDF that sits on the edge. That seems to be a cool, funky extra, but if nobody else needs it,
I think there was one of the comments somebody said having a map without the numbers would be useful, and I guess I've got a question for them, which is, so a big part of this is that you've got the overhead plan and the side elevation, and I think players would find it hard to reconcile the two, perhaps without the numbers. And I think what this has, it has the numbers, but it doesn't have a key, so it doesn't tell you what the numbers are. So you know it's a thing, but you don't know what that thing necessarily is. I think the key is the thing that's more important to be kept secret.
Ronald Terror says they don't mean one with and without labels. They think player maps should be intentionally different and incomplete to the GM map.
Absolutely.
Pure evil. Love it.
GM and Rando of Arg says, I love having NPC portraits to show the players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, these are extras that don't sit inside the core PDF. These are little extras that you can print out as little separate PDF extras that sit inside the drive-through PDF wallet, so to speak, where you can just download the bits that are most useful. So these are things that we're considering, and you're part of the process. So if you've got cool ideas that you think that we should definitely be considering, drop them in. We'll discuss them on our sides, and then we'll pull together the stuff that's both, in terms of time, feasible, because we're a small team, and we've got to make sure that anything that we decide to do, we can do in a relatively short order. For example, building a template to drop NPCs into in a bit of text, that's not so hard because it's reproducible off the same basic template. But if we're looking at, say, creating a unique map per each extra location, that is definitely quite a bit of time. So deciding exactly what we should and what we shouldn't do with our time is going to be something that we're going to be making some clear decisions on as we step forwards.
I think we're going to have to wrap up because
already, cripes, it doesn't feel like it's been time.
Yes.
Wow.
There's lots of comments to pop in, which I'll pop in as we're doing the credits. So let's just remove that and hop back there. Hello, we're back. Graham's no longer getting pasted over his face.
Thanks.
Excited to see the afterfields when ready. So are we.
Oh yeah. Defo.
talking about other maps of the well areas, what map would the thief have for the plot hook? A hastily scribbled copy that doesn't line up, a more detailed map of the upper area, etc. Anyway, I think we've got 2 Iron Rook patrons to call out.
We do. I'd like to say one thing just before I call them out, and that's that today did run quite quickly. So if you do have any other questions, and they're ones that are relatively easy for us to pick up in Discord, drop them in there and we can have a chat about it, because obviously there's quite a lot we could all chat about. We focus mostly here on more the production and the arty side, very little on the actual writing and the editing side. If you have any questions about those things, drop them in and we'll pick up the ones that we can, because that's part of the fun, really, and us doing our thing. So yeah, let me just pull out and one is Martin, thank you, Martin Millington. He's the best. I'm calling him out first because he's also one of our mods, so I don't need to double check if I remember his name. Which is a good thing.
He's a terrific guy, even if he's totally wrong about Blade Runner 2049.
Then we have Mihao, and I am going to make a small apology because I may mispronounce his last name. I believe it's Mihao Novicki. I hope it is. Thank you very much, Mihao and Martin, for dropping in his Iron Rooks. You are the best.
Thank you very much.
What we're doing happens because of contributions from those who can do so. We understand that not everybody can contribute the same amount, and that's cool. Whether it's £1, even if it's just sharing and you can't afford, that's also cool. Please do share our stuff, because one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face as a small company is getting our name out there and getting people to know that we're doing this. We're fully aware that the products that we're making are not just good enough, they're really going to be very good. And they're going to just sit there not selling at all at about 10 copies each because people aren't aware of them. We're going to need everybody's help to make sure that we can keep on doing this, because we are ultimately going to have to survive somehow too, and there's only so long we can continue moving along making what is breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs we're enjoying, but breadcrumbs nonetheless. So getting out to the wider audience is going to be very much a part of our next steps as we progress forwards to doing our first releases, and we're really going to need your help for that. So if you can think of any ways that you can do that, whether it's just sharing, whether it's helping on Patreon and saying, look, they've got a Patreon, can you go over to it, or whatever, that would be cool. Obviously, if you're not comfortable doing that or you don't want to do that, just don't. It's for the people who can and want to help. Please do so. We truly appreciate it. Don't feel like you're stepping on our toes. You are not.
No.
Yeah. Do you think we need a tip?
Don't forget, we haven't thanked the Golden Rook yet. We haven't tugged the fall.
Oh, we should always thank the Golden Rook. Yeah, absolutely. His name's always
tug the fall over the Golden Rook.
Yeah, we should definitely mention him. And also, just to make sure, if there is anybody out there who hasn't backed us and would like this PDF, you can get it right now for a measly £1. It's nothing.
What a bargain.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bargain. So do drop in, head over to our Patreon and do that if you wish to do so. That would be enormously appreciated.
How long is that offer open for?
That's going to be until I go to bed. Because once I go to bed, it shuts down.
Andy never sleeps, so
I never sleep. So that'll be 3 weeks. No, I think realistically, the cutoff will probably be about what? What do we think?
Midnight tonight.
Midnight tonight?
GMT.
Okay, you've got till midnight to line up all your ducks. If you are watching this later and it's 5 to midnight and you're thinking, holy crap, I didn't get in time, ping me, and at least then I'll know. And I'll stay up that extra 5 minutes while you're sorting.
Oh, look at him. What a trooper.
Oh, what a trooper.
And next week on Inside the Rookery, we're going to be talking about the cogs of a game with Phil Harris. So please do join us for that.
Can I also do 2 quick call-outs, just because it's only nice to do so? Theo Axner and Johannes Kamen have both joined our Patreon, at least while we were on the line here. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
I will sort out your PDF once we hang out down on this side, and I will ping you down. Did I pronounce your name even close to correctly? That's what.
Who knows? We'll have to find it. It's all kicking off in the chat about Blade Runner, so we're going to leave it there.
Sorry. You've done it now. Yeah.
Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks all. You're the
Alright.
See you
best.
soon.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.